morning, good end of fall break. So nice to see you all. Today we are actually going to start up a new series that we'll be going through for the next 6 weeks, but then we have music with the minister thrown in there a couple times, so it breaks it up. But we're starting a new series today called Defined, where we're going to be looking at all sorts of different ways this world attempts to define us as individuals. We live in a world where God attempts to define us one way, while at the same time the world we live in attempts to define us in all sorts of other different ways. So there's going to be a constant battle, a constant struggle that we all have to face in our lives to determine how we are going to be defined in the world's eyes and in our eyes and in God's eyes as well. Are we going to be defined by God, or are we going to be defined by what others say? Sadly, many people in this culture we live in today, and many Christians, have given into the thinking that they have very little, if any, actual control over how they're defined in the society that we live in. Maybe you've been defined some of these different ways, and they still hold power over you. Because here's the thing, people's words are very powerful, and they affect us. And if you're like me, you've probably had people say different things to you that affect you in different ways, that make you behave in certain ways or view yourself in certain ways over the years. And I just want to point out some of the ways that the world actually tries to define us and see if you relate to some of these. Here's some of the different ways they do it. By your intellect. One of the things that the world tries to do is define you by your intelligence. In my case, and I'll just be honest with you, some of these things, I was always the dumb guy. The guy who wasn't smart, the guy who couldn't pass in school. I was always the idiot. That's how my teachers referred to me. It's how other people referred to me. It's how my own mother thought of me for a lot of time. And then there was my dad, and it's like, well, he'll still be okay. He might be dumb, but he's going to be okay. And then I found this church. Okay, so anyway, one of the ways the world does, though, is through intelligence. You might have been the smart person, and you were defined as the smart person. Or the worst of all of them, I think, is this one, average. All right? We take these school tests, or these tests at school and stuff, so Gideon gets these back now where the government sends you their school test. And it will say that these things don't really say who your child really is, but they give you the kind of idea of who they are. And then they have the kids who are way below average, and then the average kids and the above average kids. And most kids fit in the average thing, and you're just taught you're just average intellectually. Another area is by your weight. This is a huge one. Some of us, in my case, I was referred to as bony. All right? So then in this stage in life, I have bulked up, become real muscular, so people can't call me bony anymore. Some of you, on the other hand, it was fat. You were told you were fat, and no matter what you look like the rest of your life, you will always consider yourself fat, and that's how you will see yourself, is because that's how you were defined by people when you were young. Some of it is by looks. Some people are referred to as ugly, some cute, some big ears, some big noses, some weird-looking hands, weird teeth, whatever it is. The world likes to define us by our looks. Another way the world tries to define us by our accomplishments or our lack of accomplishments. So some of you might be successful people, and you're defined as successful just simply because of the things you've done. Some of you might not have been as successful, and so the world treats you and defines you as someone that's not a success. And we have a tendency to go, that's just who I am. Another thing is your job. How many times have you been asked this? So what do you do with your life? You'd be like, well, I'm an electrician, or I'm this person, or I'm an accountant, or I'm an attorney, or I work here. And they try to define you by the job title that you have, by your economic status. You might be poor, you might be rich, you might be middle class. One of the ones I struggled through is growing up poor, is you always see yourself poor. I know Stephen's here the same way, is looking at it, and I worked at a church that was very wealthy, and you always looked at yourself as like the poor guy, and you were just like, I just don't ever feel comfortable here, because I was always defined one way, and now I'm in this group of people, and I don't feel like I'm part of them, because I allow this definition to define who I am. Some of it's your personality. Maybe you were defined as shy, or distant, or outgoing, or quiet, maybe loud. Okay, well that one sticks with you. But we get defined by our personality traits, and people go, that's your definition. That's who you are based on your personality. Some of the other ones are failures. Some of you have had failures, and the people that have known you for years still know those failures, and they still define you by those failures. And no matter what you try to do, you think that's how you will always be defined as the person who did that or had this happen in your life. Some of you, it's family history. That you came from this family, and we know what that family did and what that family is like, and that's how we define you because you're from that family, or maybe you were adopted and you didn't have a family, so you always view yourself as someone who's always inadequate. You can't be loved. And so you've been defined by the world, by circumstances. And the other one I had on here was race. Maybe you're not the right type of race, or you're not enough of the right race, or of your race that you're in, you're not 100% pure that race, so you're just not living up to the desire of that population of people. And so you get defined by your race and all these different things. But hopefully through this series, here's what I'm hoping, is that through seeing the example of a man named Joseph, is who we're going to be looking at, we will learn we actually have much more control over how we are defined and how people perceive us than we actually think we do. One of the sad things is, like I said before, is we believe what the world defines us as, we have very little control of how to affect that, and we're just kind of at its mercy. And we're going to see through the story of Joseph that is not true. 1 John chapter 4, it says, as followers of Christ, we are overcomers. We are redefined people. We are overcomers. We don't have to be defined by the things of this world and the way the world tries to define us. So throughout this series, what we're going to do is this. We're going to be looking at an incredible man by the name of Joseph, who is defined by others. He is defined by circumstances. He is defined by experiences. But he was always able to overcome them, even though all those definitions were always negative towards them. He always overcame them. No matter what was thrown at Joseph, he was always able to determine how he would end up being defined by others, to himself, and before God. He is always able to control that. Today we're going to see Joseph, and what's going to happen to him today is he's going to be facing being defined by how other people feel about him. And going, am I going to allow them to affect how I live my life and how I see myself, basically on how these people feel about me and their feelings towards me. So we're going to see how he handles those. So if you have your Bibles, you can look at this if you want to go through. It'll be up on the screen as well. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 37. And just looking through like the first 20 verses here of this book. So here's how it starts off. It says this. This is the account of Jacob and his family when Joseph was 17 years old. He often tended his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives from Bethel and Jephthah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. So here's what we see real quick. We're dealing with a teenager, 17-year-old, all right? So you know how much people's definitions of you at 17 years old play weight in your life. So most of you, if you're like most people, the things you believe about yourself today, most of them came from when you were a kid, when you were a teenager. The insecurities you have, most of them come from how you were defined as a kid, as a teenager. Is that not true? You still view yourself a lot through those years. Why? Because you weren't adults yet, you didn't know how to process it all, and how people defined you meant a lot to you, and how adults talked to you meant a lot to you. And so you were defined mostly the way you live your life out today. You still see yourself in those years, those preteen and teenage years. And so we find Joseph starting off here as a 17-year-old. It says he works for his 10 older brothers, so he has 10 older half-brothers, and then he has one biologically full brother who's younger than him. So there's 10 older ones, there's him, and then there's his little brother. So there's 12 brothers in total. He works for the 10 older ones at this stage in his career. And the first thing we see about Joseph right from the start that they make clear is this. Joseph is a man of integrity even at 17 years old. At 17 years old, working for his older brothers. His older brothers are not what you would call the guys of high integrity. They're not necessarily doing the right things most of the time. And it just says here at the very end, but Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Now, if you grew up with siblings, did that usually make you a loved sibling? Were you the loved one when you did that? Anybody here? No. What did that usually take you into the family? Okay, it wasn't a good image. It wasn't a good definition they gave you. The rest of the family and your siblings weren't real happy with you when you went and told mom and dad what the other ones were doing wrong. That's the first thing we see from Joseph. So he's number 11 of the 12 brothers. He's a guy of integrity, and he tells his dad, hey, Dad, your other sons, they're not living the way they should be living. Here's what they're doing when they're not around the house with you, when they're out tending the sheep. Here's what they're up to. Here's some of the things going on. So he's a guy we see right from the beginning, probably not real loved by his 10 older half-brothers. It goes on in verses 3 and 4, it says this, Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him at his old age. Now I would also say this, he probably loves him more too because he's a kid of integrity. He's obviously different than his other sons. And so, one, yes, he's born to his wife Rachel, who he loved the most. That's her first son with him. He was born in old age, but he's also a guy of integrity, so his dad loves him. It says he worked, so one day Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because his father loved him more than all the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word about him. So here's the next part of the story. It's kind of interesting. Jacob's a great kid, 17-year-old great kid. His dad, out of his love for him, decides, I'm going to buy you a special present. Not the other 11, but you specifically. I'm going to get you a special present. I'm going to give you this nice robe, this nice, we call it a jacket, this beautiful jacket, this beautiful robe that you get to wear around that illustrates how much I love you. Now, Jacob thought it was a good idea. Joseph probably went, that's kind of cool. What's the rest of the world think? All right? You can see it in the scriptures. They hate his guts even more. One, I already hate you because you rat on us all the time. Number two, Dad just illustrated to all of us he loves you more than he loves us. We hate your guts. We do not like you. We have no kind things to say about you. It's very interesting in the scriptures here. The way they end verse 4 is they couldn't say a kind word of him. So in his formative teenage years, his siblings hate his guts, speak poorly about him, trash him, treat him like garbage. Not because of anything him doing wrong, but just because of circumstances. So they hate his guts. It goes on like this in verses 5 through 11. It says, one night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. So you can kind of see like the layers going up here of like their hatred for Jacob, okay? Which is going to explain the next part of the story. It's like he just keeps taking it to a new level. Again, not because he did anything wrong, just because of who he is and how God has called him to be. And it says this, so they told him this dream, they handled him even more than ever. He said, listen to this dream. He said, we were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. All right, now, here's the interesting thing. We all kind of can hear what that dream says and goes, Joseph, what are you saying that dream's kind of saying about all this? I truly think Joseph really didn't think anything about it other than, hey, I had this dream. It was different than other dreams. And so I'm going to go tell my brothers, hey, brothers, what do you think about this? This is this dream I had. And I think he just genuinely went to them and went, hey, here's the dream. And they all went, we hate you. All right? Here's what they say. Their response is this. His brothers responded, so you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Now, you can imagine at this point, Joseph's life is miserable. All right? Back in this time, most of the time you spend in your life is around your family. When you're the 11th of 12 brothers, most of the time you spend in your life is around your brothers. That's your entire existence. That's your life. And he's hated. The word here is used 5 different times to get to this point in the story of how much they hate his guts. And this is who he spends his time with. These brothers of his, their feelings towards him stink. They don't like him. You'll see in the story it gets even deeper. But they treat him like garbage. They talk down to him. They say all sorts of horrible things to him. Again, not because of anything Joseph has done wrong, just simply because Joseph is who Joseph is. That's it. That's the whole reason for all this hatred. It goes on like this in verse 9. It says, soon Joseph had another dream. And again he told his brothers about it. This is why I think he's kind of naive to it. He's not understanding what he's saying to them by telling them the dream. Because he goes right back to them and says, here, I had another dream. It says, listen, I had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. Maybe he wasn't the smartest cookie. I don't know, all right? But he goes back to his brothers, tells them this next one, and it says, hey, the sun, moon, and 11 stars, they all bowed low before me. Now, again, their hatred goes to a whole other level at this point. To be honest with you, we've all been there. When people hate your guts and they don't like you, some of the stuff you start keeping to yourself, right? You just kind of shut up and you just go, you know what, maybe this one I'm not going to tell my brothers. Maybe this time I'm just going to start keeping everything inside instead of expressing it outside. Joseph's different though. Joseph doesn't respond that way. Joseph just keeps being who Joseph is. And Joseph goes, hey, I had another dream. I'm going to tell you what that dream was as well. It goes on to say this in verse 10. It says, this time he told the dreams to his father as well as his brothers, but his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that, he asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Okay, so his father first off goes, Joseph, what are you saying is going to happen here? But then he kind of takes a step back and you can see he goes, maybe there's something up here. What's going on here? Maybe there's something special about him. Why is he having these dreams? And his father takes a little perspective and steps back and doesn't hate his son, but goes, there's something potentially unique about this kid. Something really different about him. Now, here's the interesting part. Verses 12 through 17, I'm just going to tell you what happens as I'm reading through it because it's a little bit more boring. What happens here, but basically what happens is this. Jacob, one day, his 10 older sons have gone, and they've been gone for a few weeks here, and they've been out with the sheep out in the field, taking them from place to place to get fed. So he says, Joseph, he's still at home, Joseph, go out, find your brothers, go search for them, see if you can find out where they are, take them some food, get a report, see how they're doing, make sure everything's good, and just come back to me and let me know how everything's going. Now, here's the thing. I don't think Joseph was an idiot or ignorant, truly. I don't think he was. Joseph knew this was not going to be a fun journey, right? These are 10 brothers who hate his guts, who loathe him, who don't like him being around, don't want him around, want him nowhere near them. There's a reason he's back at home and the other 10 left when he worked for them. They didn't even want him around and make him do the garbage jobs because they just wanted him to stay at home so they could be free of them. And his dad says, go find them without my protection. Leave my protection and go find them, see where they're at. He had to know this was going to be a really unpleasant journey because when he found them without his father's protection, who knows how they're going to treat him, what they're going to do to him, what the hazy things they're going to do, whatever. I'm not around Dad anymore. We can do whatever we want to. But Joseph, as you look at the story, Joseph says, okay, Dad, I'll go, I'll take off, I'll go do what you asked me to do. Here's the thing, if I'm Joseph, so I like as I read the Bible stories, how I would react. I started to think through how I would react if my dad sent me to go find my 10 brothers away from the home, where I knew I was unprotected by him and didn't have his protection. And here's the things I thought I would do. One of the things I could have done is just said this, no, Dad, I don't think I'm going to do that. That's not a good idea for me to be sent to them alone and go spend some time with my brothers out in the wilderness out there. That's not a good idea. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip that. That's one option. The other option is this. Leave home, can't find them, because if you read the story here, he has a hard time finding where they are, so he has to ask around, asking people if they saw his brothers, and eventually some guy says, yeah, I think I saw them, they said they were going here, so that's how he finds them. If I was him, when I found the first guy and can't find them, and the guy just said, I think they went there, I would have been like, yeah, that's enough. I'll go home, I'll just tell Dad I can't find them, and I don't know where they are, so they weren't where they said they were going to be, like usual, Dad. But they weren't there, so I'm going to take off, I'm going to go to Dad, I can't find them. The other option is this. I go, I can't find them, intentionally can't find them. You've probably done this one in your life. And you go back home and you report to Mom and Dad, yeah, they're fine, everything's cool, and they'll be back home in a little while. Right? You just kind of lie to Dad, get by it. You don't have to put yourself in a bad circumstance, but you can go home and just tell your parents you took care of it, everything's good, and everything's cool, everything was fine. That's how I would have handled it, but that's not how Joseph handles it. Joseph, just like every aspect of his life, always a man of integrity, and he told his dad, when his dad said, hey, go do this, he says, yes, sir. I'll go do what you want me to do. And he goes off. He goes and tries to find them. The guy says they're over there. He takes off and he goes and finds them. And then we read this in verses 18 through 20. It says, when Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. Why? Because he has this beautiful little robot. All right? Here comes Joseph. It says, as he approached, they made plans to kill him. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal had eaten him, then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. You can see at this point their hatred become deadly. It had boiled to such an extent, our whole computer just reset. So that's good that I have the thing that I have before our program. So, okay, there we go. Anyways, with that said, their level of hatred at this point had become deadly, which is we will murder our own brother now because we hate him so much. You can already see they have names for him. Here comes the dreamer. So you can tell they already have names for this guy, that they nicknamed him, that they call him when they're around. But here's the interesting thing. Joseph just does what Joseph does. Joseph will not allow their dislike for him, their bad feelings for him, change who he is, and he will go about his business the way that he goes about his business, no matter how they feel about him. And that's what you see from Joseph here. And that's where I'm going to stop the story today for you in that sense. So what is the point from today? So we just got a little story. We see basically Joseph's a man of integrity. His brothers hate his guts, and Joseph continues to do what he's supposed to do even though his brothers hate him. All right? What is the point from today? The point is this. God has defined each of us in very specific ways. And if you have your program with you, because it's on the screen now, pull out your program. Because I want you to see these. I want you to read these as I read these to you. These are the ways in the scriptures that we see God defines us, defines you. He says this, 1, you are his masterpiece in Ephesians 2, chapter 10. Or chapter 2, verse 10. You are his masterpiece, and you are God's masterpiece. I don't care what the world says about you. According to God, the creator of the universe, you are his masterpiece. In Romans 8:37, it says this, you are loved. That God loves you unconditionally. That you are absolutely loved. Again, I don't care how the world has defined you or what you think about yourself. God says you are loved. In John 1:12, it says this, you've been adopted into God's family. You are not without a family. If you are someone that didn't grow up with a family, a broken home, whatever else, and you don't feel like you have a family, God says you are part of my family, that you are mine. You have been adopted into my family. In Romans 8:1, it says this, you will not be condemned. That the things you have done, if you are a follower of Christ, you will never be condemned for. You will never hear God condemn you because you have been forgiven because of Jesus Christ. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, it says this, we are new people with a new shot at life. Now you are a new person when you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You have a new shot to live out your life in a new way with your obedience to him. In Galatians 5:1, it says this, we are free from our sins. That no longer are we held accountable to our sins. We will be amongst men. They will still try to define us by them, but God never will. That you are free from your sins. In Ephesians 1:4, it says this, you are holy without fault. All right, this is a hard one to accept because we know who we are. We've defined ourselves as who we are. The world defines us based on our faults. But God says this, God says that you are holy and you are without fault in his eyes. In Ephesians 1:7, it says this, you are forgiven. Now you've been forgiven. It doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what other people think, how they're trying to find you, you are forgiven. In Colossians 3:12, it says this, you were chosen. That God chose you. That God decided, I love you so much, I'm going to choose you to be adopted into my family. And you have the opportunity to be part of my family. Yet this world that we live in will not accept any of those definitions of who you are. And this world will attempt to define you in different ways and cut you down based solely upon their feelings. That's the world we live in. But you have a choice of how you will be defined. You can choose to change your behaviors and conform to other people's feelings for you. You can choose that. You can go, you know what? You have bad feelings, you label me this way, and you can spend your entire life trying to conform to the way they treat you and how they feel about you, to prove them differently, to say I'm not who that is, or I want you to define me differently, and spend all of your time trying to get them to change their definition of you by conforming to what they want you to conform to. You can believe their labels and their names, and you can live all the years of your life on this earth worrying about how the rest of the world defines you and going, they see me this way, and that's how I see myself. They see me as ugly, so I'm ugly. They see me as fat, I'm fat. They see me as bony, I'm bony. They see me as stupid, I'm stupid. They see me this way, and they see me for this sin, and that's who I am, and that's how I'm going to be defined, because that's how they define me. And you can spend your entire life believing those labels and those names. You can hide who God has called you to be. You can hear these things that, God says you are up on the screen, and you can go, I'm going to hide those things, because if I say those things and believe those things, the world's going to mock me. The world's going to look at me and go, that's not who you are. That's not what you are. No way. That's not you. And you can hide who God has called you to be. You can basically allow people's feelings towards you to define who you are. So you can live a life and you can make the choice to go, who they think I am, who their feelings expressed towards me say I am, I'm going to live like that. I'm going to choose to believe them. Or you can choose to stand tall, accepting how God has chosen to define you and live a life empowered by that truth. Here's the honest truth. The first list I put up there earlier, I bet you we feel a lot closer to that, the definitions there, than this one. Right? Let me tell you why. A lot of times we'll read that one and it makes us feel arrogant. And we're taught as Christians we're supposed to be humble. Right? Okay? Let me tell you something. Believing those things which are true from God doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you confident in your God. Okay? There's a big difference between arrogance and confidence. Arrogance is all about you. Confidence is all about what God does in you. To believe those things is trusting God and having confidence in who God says you are. And if you choose to believe in those things, guess what? You'll be free from the labels and the definitions of people's feelings they put on you your whole life. And you can find freedom from them, and you can feel empowered, and you can feel strong, and you can hold your chest high and go, that's who I am. I don't care what the world says about me. But it's a choice you make. One of the ways that you can live will enslave you to other people's feelings and allow them to control your whole life. The other one frees you and empowers you to live a life for the kingdom of God, the eternal kingdom of God, and find freedom and empowerment of being the person God has called you to be. Your choice. One of them makes you a slave. One of them makes you free. So long as Christians, folks, we live in slavery to other people's titles of us, to their personal feelings towards us, and we allow them to dictate who we are. But here's the story and the grace of God is when we become a Christian, these become our new titles. Okay? If you put me back in a school, I'd still be a bony, stupid kid. All right? But that's not who I am. I'm a man of God. That's who I get to be. And God has transformed me in multiple ways in my life and allowed me to take those labels and put those labels over there and go, you're no longer poor. You're no longer just a bony guy. You're no longer a stupid guy. You're a man of God, and that's all that matters. And now you are described by these things. And when you figure that out in your life, you no longer are some coward who walks around life. You become someone of confidence because you know who your God is and you know how He defines you. Just like Joseph. Would you pray? Heavenly Father, I thank you for